So this past week, we released a new feature on Nebula. It's called Virtual Computer. And what it means is we're now giving your Nebula super agents a always-on device. So before Virtual Computer, you had agents and they could think, they could plan, they could do things. But now if we give that agent a device, it allows them to execute code. It allows them to manage files. You can install things like a database. You can do some really, really interesting things and really unlock some interesting use cases. Now, to help people get their heads around this, I thought I'd walk everyone through a quick build of what I thought was a pretty fun app. So you can see here I'm on Twitter. And if you're like me, you go into Twitter, you start scrolling. Obviously, I have a lot here, AI Twitter. Lots every day. It feels like there's 4 or 5 blog posts or articles that I want to read. And so what I end up doing is I end up bookmarking a lot of tweets with the idea being is like, okay, I'll come back to these. And of course, it's very rare that I come back to them. But then I thought, oh, you know what would be cool? What if I had an AI agent that had access to the whole corpus of all the tweets I've bookmarked, and I could do like semantic searches on it. So show me all bookmark tweets that have to do with OpenClaw or have to do with AI agents or any other subject or author of those tweets, and be able to use that then as a knowledge base. And so that's what I wanted to walk everyone through here on Nebula. And so what we're going to do actually is we're going to create a pipeline. All right. So the pipeline is that we're going to read my bookmarks. Once those are fetched, then we're going to want to store those in a database. So what is QMD? If those of you aren't familiar with it, it's a really, really cool tool. Actually written by Toby Lutke, who is the CEO of Shopify, of all things. I think it's the coolest things any company whose CEO is actually shipping code. Shout out Furqan. And so QMD is essentially like a on-device search engine. It allows you to do queries against any set of markdown data sources, and it comes packaged with a mini SQL database search, and it also has alongside it like an LLM re-ranker. So I want you to think about what we're going to do here is I'm going to install a vector database running on my agent's device that will serve these types of queries. And every time that it finds a set of bookmarks, it's going to, in our data pipeline that we were talking about here, this file system of markdown files is going to be indexed by QMD, and now it's in that vector database that's running on our device. And then from there, we can have a Nebula query agent that at any time, if I ask Nebula, show me bookmarks about AI agents, it would, and this agent would be automatically invoked by Nebula, and we'd be able to see that information. So I'm going to walk you through what we did here, what I did here. And so it really started with just one prompt. So I told it I had this idea. I want to create a knowledge base for tweets I've bookmarked that would allow Nebula to do semantic search against my bookmarks. The QMD project by Toby Lutke would be perfect for this. We'd need to grab the bookmarks from Twitter on a daily basis. New bookmarks should be stored as markdown files that can be tagged and processed by the QMD system. Once we've created this pipeline, we can have a bookmark query agent that can be used to search and return ranked results from this knowledge base. Okay, so what happened when I did this? Well, when I did this, Nebula immediately went into what's called its plan mode. Okay, so it planned what it was that it was going to do. And so you can imagine, as it was building its plan, what are the steps that it was going to need to do? Well, it first needed to research QMD. And so what you see here as we look at the activity after I had given my prompt is you can see that Nebula began by activating the plan and began to do web searches and began to gather its own knowledge of what QMD was, how it's installed, how it's invoked, and then also looking to with an eye towards how we are going to integrate it. And it saw that it has an MCP server. It can be integrated in different ways. It also happens to have a CLI. In addition to that, it also needed to figure out, okay, there's another piece to this, which is now we need to figure out how to get the information from Twitter. And again, that kicked off its own set of research around which Twitter APIs should be called, what are the variety of permissions that are going to be needed, and also how we can set up the OAuth flows that are going to be needed for our data pipeline. The next step now was for Nebula to actually start building this whole pipeline. And so what follows then in the conversation is essentially that then kicking off of that, searching to begin with to find out, well, what are there any already existing tools that can be used? We then needed also a coding agent, right? The coding agent then was responsible for installing QMD, and you can see that here. And so the coding agent begins with doing the installation. All of this being done locally on our device. So it created a directory where it was going to store the tweets. It also needed a processed ID. So if you think about this, like we're going to have a nightly process that's going to go and get our most recent bookmarks. Well, I don't want duplicates in my database, right? And so processed ID is keeping track of, well, what are the tweets that we've already processed? Let's make sure we don't, and let's avoid avoid duplication with that. And then we're going to need a script. And so now it's writing code. And so it wrote a Python script called ingest bookmarks, which essentially was responsible for doing that. And so it goes on, it builds everything. And so here's what it ended up with. And so you can see here that at the end of all of this, it created two ingestion scripts. It has our processed IDs.txt. It has installed QMD on our device. It's also created what's called a trigger. So at 7 a.m. Central Time, this daily Twitter bookmark is going to wake up. It's going to query Twitter, and it's going to ingest any new bookmarks into QMD. And then the last step was it created what's called created an agent called Twitter Bookmark Search Agent. So this is the agent that's essentially managing all of this. This is the one that Nebula will automatically, whenever I ask it about making this a query against my bookmarks, this is the agent that's going to be invoked. Now, before I show you that output, I want to show you all of this on the device. So now if we go to our device, you'll see here that I have my own cloud computer that's running. Every user, you should have this under your devices. So if you click on this, there's services, and so that also points to the fact that like you can actually, launch like a website and you can have that run as a service. But it also has a full file system here. And so this is my home directory. And so the first thing, if you recall, was there was a bookmarks, right? So in bookmarks, this is where our fetching Python scripts were stored. Here's our processed IDs, right? That keeps track of which IDs we've processed. And then if we go into the tweets, these are actually the generated markdown files for each of the tweets that were downloaded. And so if we click on it here, you can kind of see here that, you know, this happens to reference one of the Andrei Karpathy tweets that I had bookmarked. And so this is the markdown. This markdown then was or is to be processed into where QMD, right? So this is where QMD was installed, and there's a QMD now process running with the database, everything, all self-contained, that is running on my cloud computer that's ready now to service this whenever I make a query. And so you can see here now all of this, it's stateful. It's like it has its own computer. It's installed its own tools. It's written code. It's able to store custom data. And then it's able to launch services associated with that. So if we go back now to our chat, and then now what we can do is we can see sort of the results, right? So what I can do here is if I want to make a query, I could say, you know, search my bookmarks for anything about AI agents. Nebula, as you can see here, it knows to pick the Twitter bookmark search agent to give it essentially that task. And now it's the Twitter bookmark search's responsibility to actually perform that query. And so what you're seeing here is sort of like in line. You're seeing the activity here as a Twitter bookmark search is actually running its search. And so what it's going to do is it actually runs that search. It's going to get that information from the QMD vector database that's running. It's a little slow here because with QMD, how it runs is it performs the query and then there's an LLM re-ranker. So there's actually an LLM that's running within my QMD that's actually doing and re-rank and ranking essentially the results. And so what you're going to see here is when the Twitter bookmark search agent is done, it's going to return the results in ranked order, and it's actually going to show me the relevancy rankings for that. And so it looks like it's almost done here, and so we should be seeing these results. And I can also kind of look here and see it. Yeah, so you can see here that it's starting to render those results. It's created some categories here. Here you go. It's put it into a nice table. And so now we can see it in our results. And so you can kind of see here are the different bookmark tweets. And I can either interact with this if I want to. If I want the actual link to the tweets because I want to read the tweets, I could ask it for that. Or I could run another query. Couple of last things that I want to show you here as well. I mentioned the trigger. So it also created an automated triggers to refresh our bookmarks. And so if I go to my triggers tab, you'll see here that there's a daily Twitter bookmarks QMD ingestion task. It's going to run in 18 hours. Okay. If we view it, you can see sort of its instructions. So there's a task recipe, right, that goes along with it, and these are the execution steps. And so you can kind of read this. It's going to fetch the Twitter bookmarks using the OAuth. It's going to then run the Python script. It's going to make sure that we have valid tokens, obviously, so that we're able to read the data from it. And then it's going to process those, and it's going to write the new markdown files in our home sprite bookmarks tweets, and then update the processed IDs. And then, and this is an important step, it needs to re-index, right? So these need to be re-indexed, and then they need to be embedded in into our QMD database, and so it's going to run these commands. And so it's hands off from this point forward, and now what I can do is I can query this. The last thing I'll show you is the Twitter bookmark search agent itself. So if we go to that and we go to view, then this is where you can see the information. You can see the system prompt here. So this is the actual system prompt that the agent uses when it gets invoked, right? This is what gets updated also, like, kind of with memory. So, as it learns or it improves itself, this would be where you would see that information. But this is also where you can do other configuration for our agent, right? You can see the activity. The other thing you can do here is you can also pick from the different models. Right now, the default model I have happens to be Claude Sonnet, but if I wanted to change that to be Quen, for example, I can change that here. And so that's changed, and now on a go-forward basis, that's where I would see that. So hopefully this was helpful. You can find me on Twitter, so if folks have questions, feel free to DM me on Twitter. And also tag me. I'd love to see different ways folks are using their Nebula virtual computers. So check it out. If you want information about Nebula, just go to nebula.gg and you'll get all the information there. We're offering free credits for people who are signing up now, so you can come in and really just hit the ground running with creating and automating your own workflows.